Every industry has parasites, but in trucking, the parasite learned how to multiply. It got your phone number, your DOT info, your email, and then it got between you and the customer. It skimmed a piece, then another piece, then the whole load. And when you complained, regulators told you to file a comment and wait. That's not a system. That's a shakedown with paperwork. So here's the news. A small 3-truck fleet, Alpha Drivers Transportation, just petitioned the federal government to do something radical. Call dispatch services what many of them have effectively become, brokers, and regulate them as such. Require bonds, require authority, and while we are at it, stop handing out the phone numbers of every motor carrier in America to spam artists via public database. That petition landed at FMCSA on August 8, 2025, and it reads like what every owner-operator has been mumbling into a steering wheel for years. Enough. If you're not in trucking, you might think a dispatcher is the guy on the radio telling drivers where to go. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about third-party dispatch services, sometimes overseas, often anonymous, who claim they're just helping carriers find freight. In reality, many bitch shippers negotiate rates, allocate loads across multiple carriers, and get compensated precisely the things that, under federal law, define a broker. You arrange transportation for compensation, you're a broker. There is a reason that role requires authority and a bond. It's called accountability. FMCSA's 2023 guidance literally said dispatch services can be brokers or bona fide agents depending on what they do. A fact-specific test that centers on whether they will allocate traffic and represent multiple carriers. Translation: the line already exists. It's just being ignored. The Alpha Drivers petition asks FMCSA to make the line bright. Amend the broker definition to include dispatcher, require those dispatch outfits to carry the same financial responsibility as brokers, and slam the door on the flood of robocalls and spoofed texts that hit a new carrier the moment their DOT info goes live on Safer. If you ever launched a new MC number, you know the onslaught. FMCSA's own site warns about fraudulent marketing to new applicants and says the agency does not robocall for fees. Yet the calls keep coming because the system is wide open. That's insane. Close the door. Let's be honest about how we got here. Regulators tried to clarify the rules in 2023. They issued guidance on who's a broker, who's bona fide agent, and when dispatch services need authority. The guidance emphasized that if you are allocating traffic between carriers, deciding who gets the load, you're acting like a broker and you need broker authority. Good. But it wasn't a rule. It was a guidance. It did not create a new class, did not mandate registration for all dispatchers, and could not by law. Result? Clever players walked right through the gray area. Guidance was the speed limit sign. Nobody put a cop on the road. Meanwhile, the broader ecosystem rotted. We've had a rolling freight recession, weaker volumes, and way too much capacity. In any downturn, fraud metasizes. Cargo theft is up. Identity-based scams went from niche to normal. Impersonated carriers hacked FMCSA accounts, spoofed phone trees. Platforms have logged hundreds of thousands of blocked scam emails and tens of thousands of fraudulent calls in a single quarter this year. Those are not anecdotes. That's an industrial racket. And fake dispatch outfits thrive in that fog. They sit in the middle, relabel your identity, reroute your load, or just sell your information. Because why not? The data is right there. Public waiting. FMCSA is not blind. They've posted fraud alerts, they tell carriers to report scams, and they've said on the record that illegal brokering and double brokering are targets. In fact, the agency's long-awaited broker transparency proposal, born out of petitions from industry groups, aims to stop brokers from burying transaction records behind contract waivers or forcing drivers to fly across the country to view documents in person. That's progress. But again, this is taking years. Drivers don't live in the Federal Register. They live on margins measured in dimes per mile. If you drain those dimes with fraud, they quit. We're already seeing it. Now ask the real question. Who benefits from keeping dispatch services as not quite brokers? The answer is obvious. Anyone who wants to operate between the cracks. Real brokers have skin in the game, a bond, a license number, enforcement risk. Dispatch services without that burden can solicit carriers relentlessly, negotiate loads, and just vanish when something goes wrong. That's not competition. That's arbitrage on the absence of rules. Alpha Drivers is saying the quiet part out loud. If it walks and quacks like a broker, it should carry the same obligations. Require a bond, require authority, put your name on the line. How is this controversial? The pushback will be predictable. We'll hear, small carriers rely on dispatchers. This will kill them. Nonsense. The FMCSA guidance already carved out a legitimate space for a bona fide agents, single carrier relationships with no allocation of traffic, written agreements, clear control by the motor carrier. You can keep that. Nobody is trying to eliminate help for small carriers. What they want to eliminate is the gray marked middleman who spreads loads across multiple carriers, sets the rate, tells the driver where to go, then shrugs when the shipment disappears. That's not help. That's exposure. Another line you'll hear, we don't need more rules. We need enforcement. Right. But enforcement starts with clarity. Right now, scammers hide behind ambiguity. If FMCSA updates the definition to explicitly state that dispatching activities involving rate negotiation, shipper interaction, and allocation of loads across multiple carriers fall under broker authority, full stop. Then prosecutors, insurers, platforms, and yes, plaintiffs' attorneys suddenly have leverage. You can sue something you can name. You can revoke authority. You can define. And about the contact into free for all, this is the part nobody in Washington wants to touch because transparency sounds virtuous. The petition does not ask to lock away safety data. It asks to stop blasting telemarketing targets to the world. Let carriers opt into cold solicitations by default opt-out. Require an attestation that you are not scraping data for spam. And add teeth, $1,000 per violation contact, reportable, enforceable. If FMCSA can extend compliance timelines for broker financial responsibility rules, it can certainly modernize how SAFER exposes sensitive info that fuels fraud. The status quo is 2003 solution running in a 2025 threat landscape. You don't have to take a trucker's word that identity theft is exploding. Cargo theft incidents have officially hit record levels. Newsrooms have covered million-dollar strategic thefts routed through identity spoofing and registry hacks. Whole shipments vanish after a last-minute change in pickup requested by someone impersonating your carrier with perfect paperwork. Where did they get the contact data to impersonate you convincingly? Often from the same public sources we pretend are harmless. This is not transparency. It's a directory for criminals. Consider the culture drift. A decade ago, drivers on forums joked about the endless calls from certain big brokers after a single click on a load board. Annoying, yes, but today it's not jokes. It's threat vectors. Fraud rings programmatically hammer phones and inboxes. The broker lobby about overreach. Spare us. FMCSA already said in 2023 it lacks authority to invent a brand new class of regulated entity. It must work within motor carrier broker and freight forward boxes. Fine. Then use the boxes. If a dispatcher's activities meet the statutory definition of a broker, arranging transportation for compensation, require broker authority. If they're truly a single carrier agent with no allocation of traffic, they are a bona fide agent. The only people threatened by that clarity are those profiting off the blur. There's a second reform on the table: broker transparency. Industry advocates have spent years pushing to stop contractual waivers that hide transaction records. FMCSA finally proposed the rule change in late 2024. Keep records electronically, produce them, and stop forcing drivers to cross the country to see a PDF. When drivers can verify what the shipper paid and what the broker kept, they negotiate from reality, not myth. Combine that with a dispatcher as broker rule, and you just drain the swamp. Fewer shell games, fewer one-and-done shell companies, more real accountability. It's overdue. And here's the bigger point. You don't restore American supply chains with slogans. You do it by removing friction and fraud. Trucking's margins are thin because the middle takes too much. In a market still slogging through overcapacity and soft freight, the difference between survival and bankruptcy can be $20 on a lane. If the middleman is unlicensed and unbonded, he can take that 20 with zero consequence. If he's licensed and bonded, he's more careful. And if he's not, there is a fund to make the carrier whole. That is why bonds exist. That's why definitions matter. Will any of this fix everything? No. You still need platforms to authenticate identities in real time, brokers to publish stronger anti-double brokering controls, shippers to tighten change order policies, carriers to harden their processes, but Washington sets the baseline. So set it. Update the broker definition to end the game semantics. Lock down the safer contact free for all, finalize broker transparency rules with teeth, then enforce them like you mean it. Because the alternative is the world we have now. Criminals reading your business card off a federal website, calling you 5 minutes after your MC goes live, and helping you ride into a chargeback, a stolen trailer, or a vanished load. That is not the price of doing business. That's the price of not doing your job if you are a regulator. Truckers did their job through pandemic, through shutdowns, through a freight collapse. It's time the people who write the rules did theirs. Here's the bottom line. Real dispatchers who are bona fide agents with a single carrier relationship will be fine. Keep working, keep it in writing, keep control with the carrier. But if you're negotiating rates, allocating loads across multiple carriers, and getting paid to arrange transportation, set up, get broker authority, post a bond, and own your role, or get out of the way. The rest of the country has had enough of middlemen who don't stand behind their own deals. So have truckers. So has common sense. Pass the petition, and move on. If you found this breakdown useful and want to keep up with the stories the mainstream media ignores, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Share this video with other drivers, fleet owners, or anyone who cares about protecting American trucking. Because the more people who know, the harder it is for the scammers to win. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.